What is up, everyone? Brandon First, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench Podcast Network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. Welcome in to another edition of the In the Paint podcast. And folks, it is March and it gets real here on the In the Paint podcast. Of course, we break down everything men's college basketball has to offer. And with me, as always, is my friend and co-host, Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, I'm doing well. And you said it. They're getting ready to open the doors to the big ballroom where it becomes a 6-game season. Uh, wow. It's an exciting time of year. I hear the orchestra is already tuning up and getting ready, and people are polishing up the dancing shoes. I can't wait.
Amen. Yeah, it's this is really the last 2 weeks, the first time I've really been ingesting full college basketball kind of 24, not 24/7, I wish, but whenever I can. And this past Saturday was incredible. Last night, we are recording here Wednesday, the 5th of March. So last night we saw some pretty crazy situations. Obviously, Texas A&M taking down number one Auburn. Duke Monday night absolutely throttling Wake Forest, who is kind of a bubble team. And then Houston handling their business with Kansas. Now, that's all going on, but as we do get closer to March, it's more of a question. You're not really looking at the top before Selection Sunday. You're kind of looking at the bottom because you talked about the door being opened and the dancing shoes being polished. There are going to be some teams with some polished dance shoes, but nowhere to, or at least not dancing where they want to. Might have to go to the NIT if they want to get their dancing in. So the bubble is definitely starting to come into focus. Obviously, we have the last bit of power conference seasons to end. The low majors will get rolling. Their conference tournaments will get rolling this weekend. And then next week, we will get into major conference tournaments, obviously leading to a week from this Sunday being Selection Sunday. So time to look at some of the bubble teams. And this is coming from Joe Lunardi. And this was as of 3/2/25. And I don't ever like to, maybe poke fun or call out people, for how they do their job or anything. But as far as I know, Joe Lunardi has one job, and it's for 3 months out of the year. And we can't get daily bracketology updates, but okay. Anyways, fine. Soapbox put away for the moment. Anyway, so this was as of March 2nd. Looking at the bottom again for the bubble side of it, teams that he believes are in. These are the last 4 buys. These are essentially teams that are already going to be in the round of 64, according to Joe Lunardi. Baylor, San Diego State, Indiana, and Ohio State. Now, the last 4 in, these would be the 2 play-in games for the 11 and 12s. It would be Georgia, Arkansas, Nebraska, and Oklahoma. Now, that's interesting because those are 3 SEC teams. I don't know. I know the first round, you can't play a conference foe. I don't know if that works for the play-in. We haven't really got there. The SEC is an interesting conference this year. Now we look at the teams that are out, the first 4 out, according to Joe Lunardi: Boise State, Xavier, North Carolina, and Texas. And then the next 4, Wake Forest, SMU, Cincinnati. I cannot believe Villanova is on this list, but they are on this side. They've had an incredible, last 6 weeks. Still probably not going to be enough. But anyways, it's pretty interesting. And then it was nice to see even kind of the next 4, Santa Clara making it on there as well. So, Gonzaga and St. Mary's, those teams are in, but who knows? Maybe Santa Clara could steal a bid. But Raider Jim, your thoughts on, it's still a little early to really put a final bow on the final 68, but your thoughts on kind of the bubble as we stand so far.
Yeah, I don't want to jump too far ahead in the script, but on the last 4 buys, San Diego State did not help their cause last night, and that was wow. And they've got 1 game left, I believe, which I'm sure you're going to tell us all about that. Boise State, yeah, it's a shame that they're not going to make it. North Carolina, here it is. You and I have said it all season long. the teams, and especially the last couple of weeks, where are those teams that we usually see? The pillars of NCAA basketball. North Carolina out. Wow, that is just amazing. Villanova out. Wow, and Creighton. I don't even know if where Creighton's going to land in all this mess, but yeah, it's really, really kind of interesting to see. Baylor. Yeah, Baylor's probably going to get in there, but San Diego State, I can't wait to hear what you have to say about what they did to hurt themselves. Kind of shot themselves in the foot last night.
Yeah, and it's talking like an old man right here, but when you got to be up at 5:15 in the morning, it sure would be nice if they shoot themselves in the foot on a game that doesn't start at 8 p.m. local time, but that's okay. Yeah, we'll get to them momentarily, unfortunately, and that's a big reason why I'm kind of maybe a little perturbed at Mr. Lenardi, because I want to see what that costs San Diego State. But before we get too far ahead of myself, so I did take some of these teams and dove in kind of to the quad bracket side of things. Nebraska is an interesting one because they have the most quad one wins of the kind of 8 teams in the last 4 in and the first 4 out. However, they're 2-2 in quad 3. That is not good. 2-2 in quad 3. I didn't put those names down, but bad losses there for Nebraska. But they are 5-9 in quad 1, which isn't terrible when you look at some of these other teams. Oklahoma, look, their best win at the moment is at Arkansas. They had a really bad loss at home. They're 5-10 in quad 1, which is okay for a bubble team. But one thing that really jumps out to me, and I'm just kind of looking at the numbers because it's really hard to do an eye test, this late in the season, but they're 4-12 in a very good SEC, but it's not too often you see a 4-12 team make a tournament as an at-large bid, even in a power conference. Arkansas. Now, the big thing here, I think the name value of Coach Cal, they really don't have any bad losses. I think Arkansas will be a team that gets in, just kind of depending on if they don't shoot themselves in the foot, late in the season or in the early conference tournament. They're 4-9 in quad 1. Boise, on the other hand, they have 2 really bad losses. They were neutral floor losses, but losses to Boise State and Washington, or excuse me, losses to Boston College and Washington State, not great. However, home win against Clemson, that's really good. Only 3 quad 1 wins for Boise. That might be an issue. And then final 3 teams I was going to talk about. Xavier. Look, the good news for Xavier, they're 18-1 in quads 2 through 4. 1-9 against quad 1 teams. Their only really hallmark win was a road win against Marquette, which is a very good win, but it's a question of, is that enough for the committee to kind of digest, because they really have nothing else to hang their hat on. North Carolina, honestly, their loss to Stanford at home, that might in itself keep them out. They're going to need to do a lot of stuff in the conference tournament. 1-10 in quad 1 for North Carolina. And this was interesting to me. We talked about a bit of the ACC kind of falling off a bit, or at least where they have been. North Carolina is 12-6. Think about that. In North Carolina, in the SEC, 12-6, and they're probably not going to make the tournament. That really does show where the SEC is in the hierarchy. And finally, Texas, 4-9 in quad 1, nothing to sneeze at, but 2-4 in quad 2. I think all these teams have a lot to do in the conference tournament, and I think it's just going to be a situation of who can put the best, resume in the next 3 or 4 games together for the committee going forward. And yeah, there is another team that is firmly on the bubble that I will be talking about in depth with the Aztecs. But trust me, I have not skipped them, because I think they've already punched their ticket. Kind of the opposite, but we'll see. Obviously, the conference tournaments are a big barometer for how these bubble teams, you can pick up a big win very quickly that kind of changes things. Or you go on an NC State style run where you don't need to worry about any bubbles or anything and just go steal a bid, but it's going to be an incredible 10 days as we wind down the regular season, getting to the final 68. One team that we will be seeing in the tournament, but more than likely, for the first time in quite a long time, the Kansas Jayhawks are not going to be a top 4 seed. They have really struggled. We talked about them a few weeks ago and kind of a disappointing factor, and they have actually kind of really trended downward. Another tough loss at Houston this past Monday, but I figure we got to kind of dive in a little deeper into this. What is going on in Kansas, Raider Jim? Your thoughts?
Yeah, Kansas. I mean, there it is, one of those historic programs. They're not just used to being a fixture in the top 25. They're very familiar with being ranked number 1. And for long stretches, they're number 1. They started December 2024 as the number 1 team in the AP, had run off 7 straight victories. And since then, since that ranking, they have gone 12-11. That is ridiculous. And for a Kansas team to have 9 conference losses, that is the most losses by a Kansas program in more than 40 years. That is what a jaw dropper when you start digging into the facts. They dropped 6 of their last 8 games. They had a 34-point loss to BYU. How did all this happen? Well, I'll tell you. I said it about Gonzaga last week. I'm going to say it about Kansas this week, and people can just roll their eyes and go, here he goes again, same old song. But we're in that age, and it gets worse and worse as the years and months go by, of instant gratification. There is no discipline. You can talk to kids till you're blue in the face, but they're just going to do what they want to do because they know more than you. Or they just flat out, like Coach Hurley said about some of his UConn kids, we just give up. Forget it. We cashed in already. They're probably already looking at where they're going to play next year, some of them. So what happened with Kansas? AJ Storr, Rylan Griffin. 2 transfers. Griffin came from Alabama. AJ Storr was a hot shot over in Wisconsin, and he came in. And you know what? The other day, the other night they had a game. Those guys put up, I think, 2 points between them. They're barely playing. So you've wasted 2 spots on your roster that you thought you were going to get these guys in there, and they were just going to bring more firepower to your weapons. And it didn't happen, and it's not happening. When you give up 2 spots like that, you better hope that you've got somebody to step in and fill in the blanks. And apparently they don't have it. You can't create the chemistry when you're switching out the parts like that. That's my personal opinion. You just can't. I watched, as I usually do at this time of year, I watched Survive in Advance. I watched that again just the other night while I was sitting around and having a drink. And they said, I like when we were seniors that we knew we were going to see the same guys as when we were freshmen, as when we were second year, as when we were juniors, and then seniors. We knew that they were going to be on the team. None of this, throw them up in the air and see where they land next year. And it's starting to, some programs, it's going to benefit. Other programs, Kansas, even to a point, Gonzaga, it's not going to go as well.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't think it's as simple as just pointing and look, Hunter Dickinson, you look at his numbers, and I mean, he's having a fine season, essentially averaging a double-double, 16.5 points, and I think he's just a tick below 10 rebounds a game, shooting over 50%, never really been a 3-point threat or anything like that. The one big problem I have with Hunter Dickinson is it seems like the defensive side of his game since he was at Michigan, he's either, I don't know if it's diminished because he's gotten slow. I don't know what it is, or he's not working on it as much, but I think he averages like 1.2 blocks a game, which, look, if you're 7 feet, you have to be more active on the in the paint than that, period. And it's a lot of things, but the one thing that really jumped out to me when I watched them against Houston, it wasn't the talent gap. The talent gap wasn't astronomical. Kansas was playing with them. It was fine. The biggest thing for me is late game body language. I don't know what is going on, but there is a disconnect, at least for me, the last few weeks from what I've seen in late game situations, the slumping of the shoulders, a mistake is made and an immediate look at a teammate as if not to shift the blame, but almost like everyone look at this person. Like, it doesn't look good from the outset. And you talked about the transfers, and I do wonder, look, Bill Self is right now, I would say, with all due respect, to Mr. Hurley up there in UConn, Bill Self is the top of it. If you take everything and put it together, with all due respect to Patino and Hurley and Calipari, Bill Self has done everything they have without the BS or the noise or whatever. He's just gone about his business. He's done it at Illinois. He's done it at Kansas. I'm just wondering if it's now the time of Nate Oates and the Hurleys of we're going to almost run it like a year-to-year situation where everyone's on a one-year contract. What are you going to do to get that done, while for the success of your program in terms of wins and losses, that's probably what you have to do. But the sustainability, the dynasties, I don't know if those will hold. As you kind of mentioned, where you're not going to have a sophomore, junior, and senior 3 starters or 4 players starting 3 years in a row, to where by the time they get to be seniors, he knows where his 3 guards or 3 forwards going to be. He knows where his 2 guards going to be without even having to look. And there's a situation, I believe, of a disconnect. And I do wonder if the lower schools start to catch up a little bit, because a lot of times when you see Cinderella, look at UCSD. You look at UCSD and you go, wow, what a great season they're having. With all due respect to them, next year, they are probably going to struggle. They are a senior-heavy team. A lot of these Cinderella stories are senior-laden teams that have been there, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. They played together from the beginning, and that's kind of their extra advantage. So you do wonder if they can kind of keep that going. I don't think it's a simple, this is what's wrong with Kansas. This is what's wrong with Kansas. I think everything has just dropped a little bit, and they've kind of come back to the pack a little bit. I mean, some of the stats, 8 weeks of being in the top 25, like I said, 20 plus years of being a top 4 seed. I mean, the stats are incredible. And Bill Self having to put out I'm sorry to the fans, acknowledgement after the Houston game. Like, they're going to the tournament no matter what. They're probably going to be a 5, 6, or 7 seed. And I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe get into the Sweet 16 just because they have that type of talent. But that's the prestige that comes with being at Kansas. And I hate to say it, but I saw it with Villanova and even with Virginia. How long is Bill Self going to look around and go, how much energy do I have to do it? Yeah. Right. Like, I mean, on the outset, I mean, recruiting old school sounded laborious. Sorry. And this just sounds like outright hell. Trying to put a lineup together, going, well, shoot, if I don't get him 15 minutes, is he going to transfer next year because I'm losing it's incredible. And I think at some point, Bill Self's got to look around and go, you know what? I'm good. There's nothing more for me to do. And I think that time is coming sooner.
Give me a microphone.
Exactly. Hey, we got a spot. I'll move out of the way. But yeah.
I mean, AJ Storr, who knows if AJ Storr is going to want to come back next year? I mean, he's played 15 minutes, I think is the most he's played since December in any game. And that's just, and he's not scoring. He's not producing. So and you hit it though, because think about it. Look on there. We're not talking the big names, the old school, the blue bloods. You see Grand Canyon on here this year? No, you don't. Why? Because they lost kids. We talk about UCSD, Tritons. Wow, look at what these guys are doing. Well, what happened when Long Beach was the powerhouse of that conference? And Long Beach is like I think they've got 3 wins or something.
Yeah.
They may not even make it to the tournament because they only take the top 8 teams, I believe. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, it's the new, and I understand it. I personally, selfishly, I wish we could go back to the old school way, but I also do understand that, look, these kids got 4 years to make the most out of their opportunities. I'm a big fan of the free market. If someone's willing to pay you to do something, I mean, I'm not going to stand in your way. But yeah, the times, they are changing. And speaking of that, there's another one that I think this actually is a lot more kind of monumental going forward, at least just for the sport of basketball or college basketball. It's tournament expansion. And we just got to put our thoughts on it, because I hate to say it, but I think this offseason we're going to see some changes. But 68 teams as of now, however, 76, 84, whatever. I don't know how they're going to do it, but tournament expansion is more than likely on the way. I'm pretty sure I know Raider Jim's thoughts, and I'm pretty sure Raider Jim knows my thoughts, and you all probably think you know our thoughts, but we got to fill some time. So Raider Jim, tournament expansion. What are your thoughts?
1939, we had 8 teams that played in the tournament. 12 years later, 1951, they doubled it to 16. 1975, they doubled it to 32. 1985, doubled it to 64. 2011, they said, well, it's not fair for everybody to get left out, so let's bring in 4 more teams, and that's where the first 4 groups were added. Now, so what does this mean going forward? I don't want to see it to turn into everybody gets a ribbon. Everybody gets a participation ribbon. What, you lost 15 games? You can still be in the tournament. What, you lost 20 games? Come on, though. There's room for you. I mean, and then what do you do with the calendar? How do you keep it as March Madness, or do you you hire a marketing agency, you come some newfangled cute name and push it into April, and then you start encroaching on the opening of Major League Baseball. Mm-hmm. You start crossing those boundaries, you're making a lot of trouble for a lot of different reasons. And again, you're going to dilute it so much, it's just not going to matter anymore. And I hate to see it happen. I don't follow the NBA that much, but I remember, I am the old guy. I remember when it was just like, 4 teams were going to make the playoffs or something like that. Then they went more and more and more. I think everybody but the worst team in the division makes it to the playoffs now. And the upset is fine. I like that there can be an upset, but at the same time, my goodness, that's when the sandbagging, things like that can possibly happen. I'm not saying it does happen, but hey, we know we're going to be in, so you can rest people, you can keep people healthy. You don't have to give the 100%, is how I see it. Do I think expansion is possible on the horizon? They're saying maybe if they do it, it'll be in 2026. Well, that is, like you said, that's just next year. But what does that mean? And that they need to give a more clear answer on that. But yeah, quite honestly, I don't think they need to do anything. I wish they wouldn't do anything.
Yeah, I mean, in my vote, bring it back to 64, as much as, and I'm sure Dayton is a lovely city, and they get a nice little bump from the first 4. But, especially the 16 seed games, that's not really something you're keeping an eye on. Yeah, 64. And then also, not to mention, it's hard enough to put these darn brackets together. Now you're going to turn it into 78 or 70. I mean, how are we drawing these? They got to think about us too. But you also did mention the scheduling part of it. And I think college football kind of ran into it this year, where they got a little too deep into the NFL playoffs, to where we came out of an NFL weekend, and it's like, all right, conference championships are coming up. I think that's what it was, or maybe it was after wild card weekend, but I think it was after divisional. And it was kind of like college football, kind of like waving their arms going, no, we're playing a national title game. And it's like, no, Monday Night Football ended like 4 weeks ago. And, obviously, Raider Jim, you're a big Notre Dame fan if you're an Ohio State fan. But for a lot of maybe not big time fans, they were like, oh, that's right. There's a college football. The later you get into things, if we start having the national championship game mid-April, that's gonna be interesting because now all of a sudden, as you mentioned, you're into baseball season and stuff like that. And even school calendar stuff like that. It's
Right.
easy to be a student athlete, and then to have to then deal with, okay, well, I got finals coming up. Oh wait, no, we're gonna have to go here first, and I gotta do media. Which every one of them, they're blessed to have that opportunity, but still, it is something that needs to be kind of thought about. And I think the main thing you talked about dilution. 8 teams or 10 teams or 12 teams, however many they add, what are the chances that in that group that they win 2 games and make it to the Sweet 16? I don't think they're very high. And everyone can maybe be yelling about VCU. They were a play-in and they went to the Final Four. Okay, well, they're an exception rather than the rule. Most of these play-in games, it's cool and we fall in love. Oh, what an 11 seed. And then maybe they win against the 6, but eventually, more than likely, they will bow out either at or before the Sweet 16. We're not losing out on, with all due respect to North Carolina. North Carolina isn't going to be a national championship team if we suddenly open it up to 76 teams and they're allowed in. So that's my biggest issue. I think 64 is the perfect number. Whatever 68 is what it is. I've accepted that they're going to expand it. For me, it's just wondering if they're ever going to stop. Because even on the football side of things, I think 12 teams are too many. I don't think there's 12 teams that can win a national championship. And basketball is very different, but I don't think there are 76 teams that can win a national championship. I don't even think there's 40 teams that would be the at-large bids, because I also do think if you win your conference tournament, you do deserve to go in, and that's non-negotiable for me. So, of those at-large teams, am I going to cry any crocodile tears for the Texas Longhorn fans that are going to be left out? No. Win in November and December. I don't know what to tell you. Don't get mad, get better. But that's just kind of where I feel with it. But again, NCAA basketball, they're going after the money. That's the biggest thing. We're never going to go back down to lower amounts of content when it comes to this stuff. Just way too much money to be left on the table, unfortunately. But moving on to our conference and team reports, we're going to start with Raider Jim. Obviously, the Gonzaga Bulldogs regular season has ended and the WCC's regular season has ended. The conference tournament gets rolling, but with their ladder style scheduling, big boys won't get rolling for a little bit. But Raider Jim, your thoughts, Gonzaga, and a little bit of a WCC tournament preview.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, Gonzaga, they didn't really right the ship. And it's really interesting because I'm guilty of it. I sat here and said, Gonzaga, what's wrong with Gonzaga this year? Blah, 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 blah. Why? Because they only won 20 and they lost 8 games. There's a lot of programs that would love to have that kind of a winning percentage, and they won 20 games. I think this is, I don't know what the streak is for how many seasons in a row they've won 20 games. With that said, they had the big game against San Francisco on Saturday, and that was not necessarily for bragging rights, but it was definitely to see who's going to get that number 2 seed in the West Coast Conference tournament. And Gonzaga showed up, went into the San Francisco house, took care of business handily. They were never really challenged. They played some good defense. The shooting was good. And Mark Few played his personnel just right with the getting people on and off the floor at the right times. So good luck to Gonzaga in the West Coast Conference tournament. They are the number 2 seed. For all intents and purposes, as you and I talked last week, you will probably see another showdown between Gonzaga and St. Mary's. And speaking of St. Mary's, just like some movies, I guess, or swept the Oscars. Well, if this was the Oscars, St. Mary's swept all the big awards within the past couple of days. Randy Bennett, congratulations. I believe it's the 4th year in a row. He was acknowledged as WCC Coach of the Year. Player of the Year, Augustas Marciulionis. This kid out of, I think he's from Lithuania. Lithuania. There's two kids. One is from Lithuania, one's from Greece. This big, he's not a big kid. He's only 6 foot and a couple 100 pounds or something like that. Averages 14 points a game. Great offensive player and defensive player. Mitchell Saxon, the big man in the middle. And then they also had newcomer of the year, Paulius Morauskas. I think he might be the one that's from Greece, but he scores 12 points a game. So St. Mary's just really, 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 you look at how many awards they picked up in the conference, and it's no wonder that they were number one. They even have Mikey Lewis was called out to be sixth man of the year. Freshman of the year was a young man named Austin Rapp. He came out of Portland, but other than that, everything else was St. Mary's. Now, on the other side of it, or the other awards, if you will, all West Coast Conference team did include 3 Bulldogs: Nolan Hickman, the senior, Ryan Emhart, the senior, and then I believe Graham Ike also got recognized for his efforts and what he brought to the table for Gonzaga. So congratulations to those 3 guys. At least they did. They got acknowledged as they should have been. Hickman and Nemhart were just fantastic backcourt leaders. And when they're both out on the floor, kind of hard to watch because you can't stop them both at the same time. And as far as the tournament goes, that tournament gets underway tomorrow. And our own USD Toreros are playing in that first game. And boy, it's interesting. You hear that you're going to have Coach Lavin in there, and you're thinking, wow, this program's probably going to turn around. But that has not been the case. So we'll see what happens with the USD program between this year and next year. But I'm waiting because automatically Gonzaga and St. Mary's are already in the semifinals. So they let the other guys burn some fuel and then see what they've got left. And good luck to Gonzaga because they could either play Oregon State or San Francisco again.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, if you're not familiar with the ladder bracket, make sure you go check it out. It's interesting. And USD, I tell you, if they're going to win a conference tournament title, it's going to be a hell of a grind. It's like 5 wins in 5 days. Best of luck to them. But yeah, little unfortunate. I expected more from the Lavin era, but who knows? It's still somewhat early, and we'll see how much patience they have over there because it's been a little rough. But I did do a quick little Wikipedia search. They only have season by season essentially since Mark Few got there, but going back to 1999, Gonzaga has won 23 or more games, so not just over 20. So we're talking about 25 straight years of 23 wins or more for probably one of the most successful programs this century, if you look at it that way. So very good stuff. And yeah, very similar to Kansas. Everyone's kind of poo-pooing a 20-8 season when a lot of teams, even some of the North Carolina Blue Bloods that have been down, they would still love to be comfortably in the tournament right now. So good problem to have there for Mark Few and company. But my side of things, obviously, we kind of alluded to it earlier. San Diego State and the Mountain West finishing their season up, or their regular season up this weekend. Everybody has one more game, or well, maybe 2, as we are recording on a Wednesday. So I think there are some Mountain West games to be played tonight, but everyone will be done and dusted by this Saturday. And then a week from that Saturday will be the conference championship tournament game. Obviously in Vegas, figuring out where we go there for the Aztecs. Now, unfortunately for San Diego State, they had an opportunity to kind of avenge probably their worst loss of the season, which was a home loss to UNLV. And despite coming out and getting out to an 8-point lead early on and looking very good, the Aztecs would unfortunately drop the game. I think it was an 7 or 8 point victory when it was all said and done. Full disclosure, I turned it off with 5 minutes to go, saw the writing on the wall. My biggest problem, look, if the Aztecs go out and they just get beat because you know what, UConn's better or Boise State outpaced them, this or that, that is what it is. Last night, it was lazy basketball from San Diego State, and not just lazy basketball, but lazy defensive basketball. And that's something that's got to be ringing the alarm bells for Aztec fans, because if there's one thing that you can kind of count on, it's the defense from San Diego State, always showing up in big moments. Pulling up the standings now. Again, not everyone has finished up, but New Mexico, Colorado State, Boise, Utah State, and San Diego State sitting at that 5 seed right now, would not only be looking at Utah State in the first round, but then on the other side would be looking at the 1 seed New Mexico. And I think now, for the Aztecs, they're going to have to beat Nevada on Saturday, which that's a very winnable game and probably would be a bad loss at home. Senior night, even though senior night doesn't really matter too much anymore. And they're going to probably have to make the conference tournament championship game just to feel at least somewhat safe. Obviously, they're going to want to win the whole thing to be 100% safe, but I think a loss in the quarterfinals or a loss in the semifinals, and there's a really good shot that San Diego State misses the tournament. They are holding up that win in November against Houston, and they are hoping that that thing is going to carry them all the way to the dance floor, because that is a very good win, but they are starting, unfortunately, to start kind of piling up some bad losses, because make no mistake about it, that was a bad loss for the Aztecs. But does look like, and New Mexico did clinch at least a share of the regular season title. They can win it outright on Saturday, but does look like they are going to be the 1 seed going forward. And UNLV, always got to keep an eye on them. They are red hot right now, and with the tournament being in Vegas, that would be a nightmare for San Diego State. If UNLV wins the conference tournament, that's a bid stolen, and it's probably really easy for the selection committee to just go, you know what? Let's just give that ticket to UNLV and send the Aztecs on their way. And one final thought, obviously, it's interesting, 5, 6, 7 years ago, San Diego State fan Brandon would have loved to have seen 2 sophomores in the backcourt starting and putting in good work, because I know I got at least 1, maybe 2 more years with these guys here. But now with the transfer portal, it's just a constant question of what's going on behind the scenes. Is Miles Bird going to come back next year? It's not the kind of, it used to be, the draft or eligibility questions. Now it's happiness questions, and it's an odd situation to be in. But that's down the road. The Aztecs did themselves absolutely no favors and really have set themselves up for almost a win and you're in situation in the tournament, or else you're really going to have a very nervy Sunday, selection Sunday, I would say. But overall, I think you are going to see 3 teams coming out of the Mountain West. New Mexico and Utah State seem to kind of be that the team that, at least according to the prognosticators, is in. And then it's just kind of a question of a Boise State, Colorado State, or San Diego State. Which team, I think, impresses the committee enough to get that 3rd and final spot. And according to Joe Lunardi, the ACC would only get 3 teams in as well. That would be, again, I hate to keep piling on in the ACC, but for an old head like me to see the Mountain West get as many tournament teams in as the ACC, that would be wild. Never thought I'd see the day for that, but we shall see. Aztecs, a lot of work to be done. We'll see if Dutch can get the boys ready for both tournaments, hopefully.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the standings right now for the Mountain West, and let me tell you, New Mexico's won their last 2. Okay, that's great. But Colorado State and Boise State, they're running 6 and 5 game winning streaks respectively. Wow, there's going to be some fireworks in that tournament.
Yeah, and I think UNLV, I think it's either 7 of 8 or 6 or 7. There was, so the streak might not look as great right there on the graphic, but they have been playing really well. Unfortunately for the Aztecs. But moving on to, there it is, to our low major tournament, or excuse me, our low major conference preview. We are going to be looking at the Missouri Valley Conference, And this is an interesting conference just because there have been a lot of movement, in the last 10 years. This used to be the Butler and Creighton kind of jurisdiction. And now it's interesting. First time I pulled it up, I said, wow, Belmont out of the Atlantic Sun. They're in the Missouri Valley. But we are going to be talking a little bit in depth about the Missouri Valley Conference. Drake at the top. 17-3 in the conference as they get ready to get their tournament rolling. 27-3 overall. However, they're going to need to win their tournament. This is a one bid league. No one is getting an at-large bid from this unless the selection committee really goes looking for someone down the line in that net ranking, as Drake is the closest with at 60, I should say. But Raider Jim, your thoughts on the Missouri Valley Conference?
Well, one of the storylines I really, really like coming out of this conference is head coach Ben McCollum, head coach of Drake. He's a rookie, first time he's been there in this. And what did he do? Not only does he have them riding at the top right now and firing on all cylinders, but he got coach of the year. So congratulations to him. I think it's great. And, not a lot of flash. He just coaches. And he coaches very, very well, obviously. And then, of course, they got quite a few of the awards. The most notable, of course, Larry Bird Player of the Year, Bennett Sturtz. And he was also a transfer student, came to Drake this year. He has done very, very well. Good shooting guard. And then he also got Newcomer of the Year because it's his first year. There is a Freshman of the Year. And I just have to point it out only because I like his name. This young man is out of Valpo, and his name is All Right. And I think that's all I can tell you about the kid. He's Freshman of the Year. His name is All Right. ALLWRIGHT for those of you who want to look it up. But what an interesting conference this is. It was just a couple years ago, the reason that they were even very, very much getting the media attention was Loyola Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't. And then in 2022, Loyola Chicago bounced out. But everybody remembers, we had Sister Jean and all those good games that were there, but no more. But I like what Drake is doing, and they're followed by Bradley. Bradley's competitive. I think they split their games, their conference games this year. So we'll see what's going to happen. Definitely that one of those is going to be getting that bid as far as I can see. Let me look up a couple of these other teams. Belmont is not going to be a competitor like they used to be. Murray State is, you go right from 13-7. Everybody's playing 500 ball or way, 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 way down. Like I say, Valpo, I mentioned, they're 6-14. Missouri State is 2-18. So no, it's going to be a 2-team tournament unless there's a real big upset, and we'll just wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I tend to draw the line maybe at Belmont, even Northern Iowa. I just think this is a 2-team race or a 2-team tournament. When it's all said and done, if it goes the way we've seen. Drake is a very interesting team because obviously, look, the schedule isn't going to jump out to you, but at the end of the day, 27-3, that builds something up within you of being like, every time they step on the floor, they feel like they are going to win, whether it's right or wrong. And obviously when the tournament rolls around, if they get that ticket punched, it would be, a different situation for them. But I think even in their mind, they would think we can beat anybody, definitely in this league. And I think that is the case. You mentioned Murray State. It was interesting because Murray State, that was kind of and the movement at the top level is a lot. And I'm just going through it right now. The last time I remember talking about Murray State, they were in the Ohio Valley.
Right.
Even Valpo, I feel like was in the Horizon, or even like the Big South at one point. So it's kind of crazy. And obviously the Belmont was essentially the perennial winner of the Atlantic Sun for my entire childhood. So you aren't seeing those, big teams kind of stay at the top, but I feel like Drake has kind of always been here in the Missouri Valley, and maybe that's the big reason why they've had this sustained success. But really interesting going forward to see how the Missouri Valley, this conference tournament will get rolling on Thursday, March 6th. So probably when this gets out, probably have already been started. But it's going to be very interesting. I didn't see the bracket. I wanted to pull up the bracket really quickly, but they wanted 99 cents for it. And I said, no way. So I'm sure you all can go find it there. But it's not a ladder system or anything like that. But I really do expect our final to be looking at on Sunday, Drake and Bradley, to figure out whose ticket is going to be punched out of the Missouri Valley. Now, there are obviously this Thursday and beyond that, most of the low major conferences will be getting their tournaments rolling. Just wanted to throw that out there. Raider Jim, I don't know if you wanted to add any low major tournaments that maybe have caught your eye going forward before we get to the games of the weekend.
I think the only one that you and I are probably going to have our eyes on, and we won't be surprised when UCSD wins the Big West tournament, and that's not going to get started until next week. But I'm kind of interested to see what they do.
Yeah, I always like watching like the championship games for these. You know, and I keep bringing up, how old or, what my back in my day, but, it wasn't to the point where you had 800 streaming platforms to where you could see the play-in game for the MEAC. You get one shot to see Hampton, or you get one shot to see Florida A&M, and it was usually that Saturday or Sunday, kind of the last day of the regular season for the big schools, but they were starting to punch those tickets, and you see that jubilation from the players of, we did it, we're going to the tournament. I'm really excited to see that. I don't know when the tournament gets rolling, but one thing to keep in mind, the Ivy League finally has joined the conference tournament train. Well, kind of. Let's call it a conference championship game. The top two teams I tell you, the Ivy League, they finally got dragged to the table, but they said, fine, I'm here, but I'm only eating 2 bites. So they're only bringing 2 teams in, which, if you know about the Ivy League, that's pretty much kind of how it goes anyway. But it will be interesting to see how that goes. Did just kind of want to throw that out there. And then the Sun Belt took their cue from the West Coast Conference. They have taken their ladder system and implemented it their way. So I think James Madison is already in the semifinals, but I think that is only one team is placed straight into the semifinals, a little different than the WCC. But make sure if you get an opportunity, especially Sunday, I think Sunday is the big day for a lot of these championship games. Real good opportunity to see some of these low conference teams, even if you just see them for a few minutes. Something to plant in your head, because I always say it, but one of these teams is going to bust your bracket. So hopefully try to get ahead of that. But moving on to our final segment as we wrap things up. The games of the weekend, because looking ahead to next week, we know tournaments are starting, but I can't sit here and tell you who's going to be playing who at what time. But this is the last time we'll be able to do that. Huge weekend coming up. Saturday is absolutely jam-packed. St. John's at Marquette. That's number 6 St. John's at number 20 Marquette. Kentucky, number 19, they're heading to Columbia to face number 15 Missouri. Number 25, Mississippi State, they're heading to Arkansas. Arkansas, that's a big game for them as they are firmly on the bubble. They would love one more feather in their cap. The Iron Bowl on the hardwood, number 7 Alabama at number 1 Auburn. Auburn dominated the first matchup in Tuscaloosa, so we'll see if they can carry that on. Mississippi at number 5 Florida. Mississippi far off of the bubble, but a win in Gainesville, that makes them a live contender. So big game for the Rebels out in Oxford. Number 2 Duke heading to their old foe at North Carolina to face to go to Chapel Hill. Of course, North Carolina, that would be a huge win if they could get the job done. However, they were absolutely dog-walked in their first matchup, even though it was in Durham. And then finally on Saturday, number 3 Houston heads to Waco to face Baylor again, another bubble team that would love to grab that feather and put that into their cap. And finally, essentially all the power schools will be done. But Michigan and Michigan State, they want to play all on their own on Sunday. Number 17, Michigan. Number 8, Michigan State. And then we can't forget about Monday and Tuesday. Monday, you will see the WCC finals. Gonzaga and St. Mary's will be playing, not against each other. They'll be playing whoever comes out of it. And the finals, which I think we both expect to see Gonzaga and St. Mary's advance to, will be played on Tuesday of next week before the conference tournaments get rolling for everyone else. But Raider Jim, your thoughts on some of these games as we wrap up the regular season?
Yeah, going back to some of the theme of our program that we've had already, you look at that one game, Duke, North Carolina. How many weekends in the past when it was that last weekend of conference play, Duke and North Carolina, and that was must-see TV. You had to watch it, and you knew it was going to be a battle. Doesn't feel like that this year. It just doesn't. It looks like Duke's just going to go out there and take care of business. Number 24, Arizona. Now, if Kansas wants to get any type of, make up for what they've done or make themselves feel good going into the conference tournament and everything, take care of business against Arizona. And if that does happen, and I'm Tommy Lloyd at Arizona, I'm kind of nervous about the whole tournament thing. I get it. They're in second place right now. That doesn't mean anything. And they're not playing. I mean, they just keep dropping in that top 25. Even Kentucky. We'll see what happens with Kentucky, but somehow they've hung around, and how they're still in the top 20 is beyond me, but we'll see. And St. John's, much as I like Marquette, let me tell you what, St. John's is going to go take care of business in Milwaukee. And St. John's, there's the team that I would not want to play in the first round or the second round. They just don't care. They've got blinders on, and they're just, whoever steps on the court, let's play ball, let's do it. So we'll see. And there was a day when I would have thought that other matchup that you have down, the interstate battle between Houston and Baylor, that would have been quite a game. But again, Baylor is just not the Baylor of 2 years ago or even last year. So we'll see what happens. But I think that might be Baylor's last shot.
Yeah, normally, you kind of look at these. Obviously, Duke's a 1 seed. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So, you kind of ask, well, what are they playing for? Anything like that? They would absolutely love to put the final nail in UNC's coffin if they could go out and win by 25. And I'll tell you this right now, Duke is playing the best basketball I've seen in a very long time. They are so bleeping good. They're beating everyone by, astronomical numbers. I saw a tweet. It was like their last 4 games, it was the deficit was 40, 34, and 28, something like that. The numbers might not be right, but they're in that ballpark. Absolutely incredible. I know Auburn has that number 1 next to them, but they fell last night to Texas A&M. I think Duke's the best team in this country on the college level. It'd be very interesting because for UNC, it's very simple. Well, the saying it out loud is simple. Maybe actually doing it isn't. But if they go out and they beat Duke, I think they will be a tournament team. But again, I think Duke wants to end that. That Arkansas-Mississippi State game is interesting to me, mainly because I want to learn a little bit more about Mississippi State. I'll be honest with you. I haven't seen anything from Mississippi State this year. And that's my own fault, not, anyone else. But I'm very intrigued by this team that I know is good. I just want to know how good. And I think it'll be a very good test going to Fayetteville, a very desperate Arkansas team. And I'm also, looking ahead to next week, the WCC, very excited to, hopefully see a good semifinal, but I want Gonzaga St. Mary's. With all due respect to the San Franciscos or the Santa Claras, or anyone else who wants to be a fly in the champagne, I think we all want to see Gonzaga St. Mary's round 3. And again, it'll be the cliche. It's really hard to beat a good team 3 times. And that's what St. Mary's will essentially have to be doing or asked to do if they do face off in the WCC final. But Raider Jim, as we wrap things up, not only on this podcast, but really on the regular season, final thoughts.
Final thoughts. The one thing that is just lurking out there, and when we talked about it just a little bit, we talked about the expansion of the tournament, or thoughts that they may expand the tournament. I'm going to try to find my notes, dust off and update what I wrote a few years back. And maybe next year, or not next year, next week, when we hit record, I'll give you a breakdown on financially what this means to the programs when they, and not just the programs, but to the coaches and things like that. And it boggles the mind. So hopefully I can put my fingers on those notes. Like I say, polish them up, bring current numbers, because like everything, inflation has caused everything to increase, including the prize money that these schools are getting. And good luck to everybody, all these kids that are going to leave it on the floor and probably will never play organized, at this level basketball again. Good luck to everybody. I hope everybody stays healthy.
Amen. My final thoughts. I want to shout out Texas A&M's Wade Taylor IV. Last night was senior night for Texas A&M and for Wade Taylor IV, and we saw something that it might be turning into a little bit of a unicorn or a situation. We have a player who was at Texas A&M for all 4 years. And his jersey was raised to the rafters. He's a fantastic basketball player. I do expect, next level type stuff. Nothing crazy, but I think he's definitely got some role player NBA capabilities there. But they raised his jersey to the rafters, and then he went out, played very well, and Texas A&M got their biggest win of the season, beating Auburn. I just wanted to shout him out because even last night watching college basketball, it was senior night for Nevada and it was senior night for UNLV in the 2 games I was watching. And excuse me, even the announcers kind of acknowledged that, senior night isn't what it used to be. It isn't, I saw you coming in here as a freshman and now you're walking out as a senior. It's kind of like, oh, I'm a senior. I don't have any more eligibility. And this is where I am when that happened. Let's go bring the family out, which is still great. Don't get me wrong. But again, I just wanted to shout out Wade Taylor because I do think that the era of a 4-year, not even a 4-year starter at one team, but just a 4-year player at one team, I think that is going by the wayside. And for Texas A&M, I don't mean to laugh because, he definitely deserves it, but it's a little tongue-in-cheek to just kind of laugh and go, yeah, he stayed all 4 years, and that's the only reason they raised his banner, and that's not the case. But if you want to kind of get cynical with it and, be like, oh, it's the only way that, kids will stay for all 4 years at one place if you promise to raise their jersey at the rafters. But
again, and I'm going to tell you, excuse me, if it doesn't hold the same light, or the same light doesn't shine on it like it did. But back in 1999, that Cinderella team for Gonzaga, I just happened to be up in Spokane, Washington. And one of the players I had met when he was down here at USD got me tickets to go to the game. I had no idea it was senior night. And I had never been able to be at a senior night for a Division I college program, even though they were, small at the time. But to watch the emotion. And there was one young man, he wasn't even a starter, but I remember when he went out there, you could see the emotion on him. And then he got out to center court. He got down on his knees and he kissed the logo on the center court. And I'm telling you, there wasn't a dry eye in the house when that kid did that, and the ovation he got. So yeah, if it's too bad that some of that luster is not there anymore, because there was, as a matter of fact, Matt Santangelo, who you and I spoke with just a couple of years ago, he was a senior that year.
Yep.
So it was just, you see 4, 5, 6 guys and their moms and their dads, and wow, it was really quite a feeling. And it's too bad that has been taken away.
Yeah, it doesn't have that same feeling. But Wade Taylor definitely doing his thing. So wanted to shout him out, and hopefully we'll see more of that, for 4-year starters, and especially at the Power 5 level, because I do know there are a lot of players, at the mid and low majors that do stick around, and unfortunately, just my own thoughts, but they it's tough to get into the news when you're at that level, unfortunately. But thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the In the Paint podcast presented by the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It is time for y'all to go wash your hands and stop hating everybody. We'll talk to you all very soon. Take care.
Go Zags.